Hey everyone, welcome back for another Deep Dives.
Glad to be here.
Today we're going to be getting into some really interesting stuff. We're talking about brain science and politics.
Really fascinating stuff.
So buckle up. So we're diving into a new study that actually revisited a 2011 study, have you seen this one, about brain structure and political views.
I have, yeah. It was out of the UK, right?
Yeah, from the UK. And this new study kind of took that core question and ran with it.
Yeah.
Can our brains, can our gray matter actually give us clues about our political leanings?
It's a big question.
It's a big one. And they supersized it this time. Way bigger group of people, more diverse, all that good stuff.
Much better for science.
Way better for science. So before we get into that, let's rewind to 2011. What did they find back then?
Well, the study out of the UK was pretty small.
Okay.
Only 90 students.
Oh, wow.
But what they found that people who identified as conservative, they tended to have a larger amygdala. And that's the part of the brain that processes a lot of emotions, especially fear and excitement.
So we've got this link, maybe, between being conservative and this potentially larger amygdala.
Right.
So what did this new study find? They had a lot more people involved this time. Did they see something similar?
They did. They did. And that's what's so compelling about it.
Okay.
They had 928 participants this time. It was in the Netherlands.
Okay.
So a totally different political landscape.
Yeah, very different.
But that link between the larger amygdala and identifying with conservative views, it held up.
Wow. That's kind of crazy to think about. So, I mean, does this mean every political debate is just like one side's on an emotional roller coaster?
Well, not necessarily.
Okay.
It's not really about how strong the emotions are. It's more about how those emotions get processed, maybe.
So not that one side is just like wired to be more emotional,
Right.
but maybe their brains just sort of understand those emotions in a different way.
Yeah, exactly. Especially in a political context.
Which, let's be honest, can be super emotionally charged.
Definitely.
Now, that 2011 study, they also looked at another part of the brain, the anterior cingulate cortex. It helps kind of regulate our emotions.
Right. Keeps things in check.
Did this new research find a connection there, too?
You know, they didn't. And that's actually really important.
Okay, how so?
Well, it shows us that science isn't always about getting the same answer every time.
It's more about the journey, kind of.
Yeah, it's about asking better and better questions.
I like that. Always learning. Speaking of learning, I heard this Amsterdam study uncovered something totally new, too.
Yeah, something that could change how we see the connection between our brains and, who we vote for.
Okay, now you have to tell us. What did they find?
So they found that the conservatives in the study, they tended to have a larger right fusiform gyrus.
Okay, had to look that one up.
It's a mouthful.
For those of us who maybe haven't thought about brain anatomy recently, what is that? The fusiform gyrus. And why does it matter for all of this?
So it's kind of near the back of the brain. And it's really important for being able to process what we see, like recognizing faces especially.
Really? So are you saying conservatives are better at remembering faces? Is that why they always remember those politicians with, like, the super long names?
Well, let's not jump to conclusions.
Okay.
But it is interesting, right?
Yeah.
Researchers are looking into whether this larger fusiform gyrus in conservatives, maybe it means they're just better at remembering the faces of politicians who, share their views.
Okay.
And then think about it. When you go to vote, that kind of unconscious facial recognition, that could actually sway things.
That's wild. Like, you're at the voting booth, you've got this ballot, all these names you barely remember.
Right.
And then, boom, one face that just pops out, and you're like, wait, I know that guy. He was on that billboard I see on my way to work.
Exactly. And that little bit of familiarity, even if it's just like purely visual, it can be surprisingly powerful. And it just shows how these tiny differences in our brains, we don't even realize they could be affecting our decisions.
Makes you wonder about political campaigns, too. Like, are they adjusting their whole visual strategy based on this? It's like a whole other level.
Oh, absolutely. It makes you think about the tactics they use, for sure.
Okay, but before we go too far down that road, I think we have to address the elephant in the room. Or maybe I should say the donkey.
I see what you did there.
We're talking about brains, we're talking about politics,
and
it feels impossible to avoid the topic of intelligence.
Right, and I want to be very clear here.
Okay.
A bigger brain region does not mean someone is more intelligent.
Good. I'm glad we're on the same page.
Yeah, we don't want to oversimplify things. This research is about these really subtle differences in structure, not about who's smarter.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's like saying someone with longer legs is automatically a better athlete.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, maybe they have an advantage in some sports, but it doesn't mean they're going to be great at everything.
Exactly. And it's the same with our political views, right? They're
Yeah.
shaped by so many things. How we grew up, our experiences, what we read, the conversations we have. You can't boil it all down to one single thing in the brain.
It's way too complicated for that. This research is fascinating, but it's really just one small piece of a much bigger puzzle.
I agree. It gives us this little glimpse into how our brains work, maybe how our biology and our beliefs kind of connect. But it's important to remember that this is still a very new area of research.
So we've explored these fascinating links between brain structure and, well, our political leanings. But where do we even go from here? Are we, like, hardwired for this stuff?
I wouldn't say it's that straightforward. It's not like we can just scan someone's brain and predict who they're voting for.
Right. It's more about the bigger picture, yeah.
Exactly. It's about appreciating how complex our brains are and maybe realizing that even our strongest beliefs, well, they might be influenced by things we're not even aware of.
Like our brains have these secret back doors kind of steering our opinions.
It's a good way to put it. And the more we learn about these intricate pathways, the more we question who we are, what we believe, why we believe it.
It's definitely given me a lot to think about, like watching one of those really intense documentaries. You come out with more questions than answers, but you're still, like, buzzing with curiosity.
That's what makes this such an exciting area of research. It keeps evolving, challenging what we thought we knew about ourselves.
This is definitely a deep dive I won't forget anytime soon. So, for everyone listening, what's the one thing you really want them to take away from all of this?
I'd say next time you find yourself disagreeing with someone about politics, and let's be real, it happens to everyone, just remember, there might be more to it than meets the eye. Our brains, with their unique structures and quirks, they could be adding layers of complexity to those disagreements.
It's a good reminder that a little understanding can go a long way, especially these days. Well, that was incredible. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. And until next time, keep those brains firing.